This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Sudan's Sovereign Council to be named amid latest deal signing celebrations. New Ebola treatment drugs soon to be available for every patient in DR Congo. And Nigeria's Bolaji Ona-Olapo creates charcoal pictures that are deceptive. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. In business, Africa Development Bank set to revise the continent's economic outlook. And in sport, South Africa women's rugby team books 2021 World Cup slot by thrashing Kenya Lionesses 39-0. We start in Hong Kong. Thousands of protesters on Sunday gathered in the city's landmark Victoria Park to voice their demands to local authorities. Some gathered outside the People's Liberation Army Hong Kong Garrison headquarters and the Hong Kong SAR government headquarters. They were filmed directing laser pointers at the two buildings. Our next report has more.
Hong Kong police reported roughly 120,000 people at Sunday's rally. The demonstration started in the afternoon and went on through the night. Police had given permission within Victoria Park, but demonstrators later occupied main streets in downtown, paralyzing traffic for hours. Organizers had said the demonstration would be rational and non-violent, but scattered incidents of violence were witnessed across the city. The national flag outside the building downtown was brought down. A man from the mainland was surrounded, chased and yelled at. The day before, there was a pro-police gathering at Tama Park, just a few blocks away from Victoria Park. Participants said they want a peaceful Hong Kong.
现在这个现象好像是乱七八糟。
The situation now is pretty chaotic. Our hometown should be peaceful and stable, but now they're deliberately damaging it. We feel really sad.
Today I'm expressing my concern for the violence and Hong Kong's safety and my hope for young people to stop sabotaging Hong Kong.
Many young faces were seen at Sunday's rally, as during previous clashes with the police. So Hong Kong's educators are calling out to young people and asking them not to be used by outside forces.
Many of our students here really don't know their country. They don't have a sense of belonging. That makes them an easy target of foreign powers.
I really want all the agitated young people to stop being so agitated. Remember, it's your own career that's at stake.
I urge every young student to really know society, really improve your own knowledge and moral standards before you can be really useful to your country.
CGTN.
Staying in Hong Kong, a court has denied bail to a 19-year-old man charged with attacking Global Times reporter Fu Guohao. The suspect, Lai Yunlong, was arrested on Friday for illegal imprisonment, assault and unlawful assembly. The case was adjourned to October for further police investigation. Fu was attacked last Tuesday when protesters occupied the city's international airport. Protesters tied him to a luggage cart, hit him, dragged him around and shouted for him to be hanged. Fu was discharged from hospital the next day. The Hong Kong regional government says about 180 police officers have been injured in riots so far. The government says it fully supports the police in their law enforcement efforts. It also appeals to those participating in rallies to express their opinions in a peaceful and a rational way. The government calls on them to say no to violence to bring order back as soon as possible. Meanwhile, police in Hong Kong are denying that plainclothes officers mingled with groups of protesters.
By taking this opportunity, we want to make a lot of clarification. Yesterday, some people are accusing that some of the protesters actually went back to work in the police station. And yesterday they're saying a large group of protesters who are wearing a dark uniform actually enter into the police officer. They're being mixed in the group of protesters. Actually, yesterday late evening, for some people wearing dark uniform, they are actually the police officer from our police station. Because the traffic is jammed, so these people get out of their vehicle earlier and walk back to the police station. And they're saying also some accusation about the arrest in police station. And I would want to make an accusation. There's no family members being arrested from the police officer. These are all rumors. Please do not trust those rumors.
China says Chinese citizens living in other countries have a right to demonstrate against violence in Hong Kong. At a routine press conference in Beijing on Monday, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also called on overseas Chinese to obey local laws.
Firstly, it is entirely reasonable for Chinese citizens abroad, including students, to express their anger and opposition to words and actions that seek to split the country and defame China. Secondly, at the same time, we also hope that Chinese citizens abroad will express their patriotic enthusiasm in a rational way and also pay attention to their own safety. Thirdly, the Chinese government always urges its citizens living abroad to obey local laws and regulations. Meanwhile, we also hope the relevant countries will have respect and understanding for the legal activities of the Chinese citizens living there and guarantee their legal rights.
Now to some news in Africa. The signing of the latest and final power-sharing deal triggered unprecedented celebrations in Khartoum. Sudan is expected to soon name a complete sovereign council comprising 5 civilian members, 5 military nominees and 1 jointly chosen 11th member. The body will replace the current transitional military council and rule for a period of 3 years. A prime minister is also due to be formally appointed on Tuesday. CGTN's Brian Toussaint reports.
Rare scenes of jubilation filled the streets of the capital after generals and opposition leaders signed the document that will govern Sudan's 3-year transition to civilian rule. Making the most of a new freedom acquired during 8 months of protests and clashes with men in uniform that left at least 250 people dead, Sudanese families could not hold back their joy.
The civilian-led government must eliminate all the inequalities rather than using it and rather than the reinforcement of these inequalities.
If they do not these things in the right way, that means we will proceed against them. We will proceed against them another time.
The ruling Sovereign Council is to be comprised of 5 civilian members, 5 military nominees, and 1 jointly chosen 11th member. This body, which will replace the Transitional Military Council, will be headed by a general for the first 21 months and a civilian for the last 18 months. A cabinet is then to be formed before Sudan's new institutions can tackle the main challenges that lie ahead, including reviving the country's economy.
We hope it is the beginning of good things. Yes, we trust them, but not 100%, and we hope it's for the best.
We still have people who are missing. We are asking the new government to bring them back to us. The celebration we are having is not because now we have a civilian government. No, it's a celebration of the martyrs because their rights will be respected. It is now the right time to ask for the fate of those who are missing, and we are not yet celebrating.
Many see this as the beginning of a new Sudan after 30 years of rule by the now detained Islamist general Omar al-Bashir. Bashir is wanted by the International Criminal Court on genocide charges for crimes committed in the Darfur region and faces trial for corruption, but his fate remains unclear. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Sudan's ousted President Omar al-Bashir has arrived at the courthouse in Khartoum, where he will be facing corruption charges. In June this year, Bashir was charged with illicit possession of foreign currency and accepting gifts in an unofficial manner. In May, Bashir was also charged with incitement and involvement in the killing of protesters. His trial will be a test of how serious the country's authorities are about trying to erase the legacy of his autocratic 30-year rule, marked by widespread violence, economic collapse and the secession of South Sudan. Sudan's ruling military council on Saturday signed a power-sharing agreement with the main opposition coalition, paving the way for a transitional government and eventual elections. Health experts in the Democratic Republic of Congo say new drugs which have proven successful in the treatment of Ebola will be available to every patient. The trial drugs were found to have significantly reduced the patient death rate, but the developments come amid continued confirmation of new Ebola cases. Leon Esenyange reports now from Kinshasa.
Health experts say they want to expedite the distribution of the new Ebola drugs. Region EB3 and MAB 114 showed significant success in treating Ebola in clinical trials. Making the medicines available to everyone who needs them is now the priority.
The company will provide the drug. They ensure that they will provide as much as we need to cover the outbreak. So there is no problem or shortage, or is free, and they are provided to treat patients. So there is no problem for the doses.
Until recently, there was no reliable way to treat the Ebola virus. Last month, the World Health Organization declared the outbreak in DRC an international public health crisis. But collaborative efforts in finding solutions, like the new drugs, could be a promising turn to ending the epidemic.
It was worth it because it's going to save lives. And that's what we ultimately care about as the American government, the American people who support this effort, and I know that's what we all care about for Congo and for the rest of the world.
But Ebola cases continue to emerge. This week, a mother and her 7-month-old child were confirmed to have tested positive. They were the first recorded cases in South Kivu.
What we are doing now is to involve more local people in the treatment center, and also local people who speak the local language, Nande language, to carry out every activities there. I mean, vaccination and surveillance and contact tracing.
Nearly 2,800 people have contracted Ebola in this outbreak since the first confirmed case in August last year. More than 1,800 have died. While the discovery of the drugs is a major step in curbing the Ebola epidemic, the World Health Organization says it will continue to conduct research and incorporate its findings into the Ebola response plan. But even with the progress made so far, it may still take a while for this epidemic, already the second worst ever, to finally be put to end. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
The number of children in the Democratic Republic of the Congo who have been orphaned or left unaccompanied due to the Ebola epidemic has more than doubled. The United Nations Children's Fund now says there is an urgent need for more specialised care for the affected children affected by Ebola. Leon Esenyange now reports.
According to the UN agency UNICEF, more than 1,300 children have been registered as orphans since the start of the Ebola outbreak last August. Within the same period, close to 2,500 children have been separated from their parents or caregivers. Officials say it is a harrowing experience for children who are watching their parents die in front of them or seeing loved ones taken to Ebola treatment centers, uncertain of when or if they will return. Health officials are working on scaling up the child protection programs in the Ebola-affected areas to help the children deal with the loss, stigma and isolation. The current Ebola outbreak in the DRC is the second worst ever. It has so far killed more than 1,800 people. Leon Sanyangesi, GTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Medical humanitarian organization Médecins Sans Frontières says very little has been done to combat the measles epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, the infectious disease has killed more than 2,700 children since January. Now, 23 out of 26 provinces in the country have been affected, but a lack of routine vaccinations and hygiene, the prevalence of conflict and the high numbers of displaced people have contributed to the spread of the high disease. Only $2.5 million have been raised out of the $8.9 million required for the health response plan. Well, we are now joined on the line by Carol Janssens, head of mission of Médecins Sans Frontières in the DRC. Thank you very much for joining us. Carol, what is the status of the measles epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo?
Well, like you said, it's an epidemic that is raging through the country for many months now. It's the biggest measles epidemic that we have seen in the past 10 years, with more than 2,700 children that died from it in recent months. A lot more needs to be done to tackle this epidemic.
And Carol, how has Médecins Sans Frontières dealt with the epidemic?
So we have been working in different parts of Congo in our regular projects, but we have also added extra teams to vaccinate and to take care of the people who do fall sick in many parts of the country. We actually have a team in the Mayendombe province that is following the river Kasai and vaccinating and treating children along what seems to be one of the main axes through which the epidemic propagates.
And finally, what do you think needs to be done to combat the spread?
Yeah. So many more means, many more actors have to get involved, and the contrast with the means that are pledged to the Ebola epidemic in the east part of the country is enormous. So much more has to be done. $2.5 million is very little and will not help much in combating this epidemic. Of course, this epidemic is also the result of years and years of no routine vaccination, a lack of surveillance. Of course, we're in Congo with a lot of displacement, of conflict, which doesn't make it easier either. There are many means that are needed to organize vaccination campaigns, so much more has to be done.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. That was Carol Janssens there, head of mission of Médecins Sans Frontières in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Moving on to other news now. Police in Uganda have confirmed the death of 10 people after a truck carrying petroleum burst into flames in the western district of Ruberizi. According to police, the driver of the truck lost control and rammed into 4 commuter taxis that were loading passengers at a busy trading centre. The accident comes just a week after a fuel tanker explosion in neighbouring Tanzania, which killed 85 people. CGTN's Michael Beleke has that report.
Police say the death toll is likely to go up as more people are reported missing. Many nearby shops caught fire as petroleum spilled from the burning truck. Investigators say DNA testing may be required to identify the bodies of the 10 victims found so far. Police say the petroleum tanker was on its way from Kenya to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The last fuel tanker accident in Uganda happened in 2013. That fuel tanker burst into flames, killing more than 30 people who were siphoning fuel. Michael Balekesi, GTN, Kampala, Uganda.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including executives in Guinea partner with Chinese firms to improve techniques. And South African designer creates jewellery inspired by traditional African roots.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria now for a look at some economic data out of the country.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora has made an important step towards banning the sale of wild elephants to zoos. A large majority of countries intend to keep animals in their natural environment. This vote is the first of the UN's CITES conference on endangered species, which runs from Saturday until August the 28th in Geneva in Switzerland. Thousands of delegates, policymakers and conservation experts from more than 180 countries are debating 56 proposals to change the level of protection for wild animals and plants. Well, for more analysis on this resolution to prohibit the transfer of elephants caught in the wild to so-called captive facilities or zoos, we're now joined by Jim Justice Nyamo, Executive Director of Elephants Neighbours Centre. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, as we know, Kenya, among a host of other countries, supported this amendment to the resolution. How important is this resolution?
Thank you so much. The resolution comes in handy when we've seen so many elephants. Like some countries have been, trading with live elephants. We know of some countries like Zimbabwe and even others that have not even come out of, in the media seeing, taking animals there. It is one good step because we know for sure that the countries like in the West, like the China, we have even the Indonesia, some countries like Japan, Thailand, have been actually buying these animals. We've seen cases of that. So this comes in handy, and we're very happy to start with because it's going to aid the trade. As we even look for the ivory trade now, the now taking of live animals now, this has come to an end.
Okay, so why was there a move against amending the resolution from some countries? What was behind that?
Some countries were they were not happy about this because they still want to do the trade. I know some countries, even like Southern Sudan, they still want to do the trade. Some other countries are coming on board, There is still business, as they say, because as long as there is market, any country would want to do that. And that way, when we have elephants, we still have other animals that can also be taken into the zoo. And in the name of taking them to the zoo, others sneaked into the market.
Let's broaden it out and talk about other animals. The delegations from all over the world are gathering, as we know, in Switzerland to discuss this, the protection of more than 500 species. What key issues are being addressed at the conference?
Okay, the key issues are what are causing the challenges in conservation. And we are talking of one of them is basically the poaching, which is ivory trade. These are the levels of market. And then we are talking also about the international protection. So those two key things, because every country must look at the poaching trades, have to look at the mitigations for the poaching, but for international restrictions like that one now, we saw just another day the US President Trump refusing to sign a bill that country is going to affect the countries where their animals are. So those two things are being addressed. And then the other thing is, what about the animals that are found outside the protected areas? I know there's a discussing. We'll be talking about the communities. We'll be talking about the indigenous communities. Which role do they play when it comes to conservation? Which law back them, like here in Kenya? Which law back the communities when they establish conservancies? Do we talk about, are they parks? Are they game reserves? Where are they?
And finally, what resolutions would you like to see coming out of this conference?
I know this is going to be one of exciting and hard time for the CITES, this COP18 now, because we've seen the UK have stopped the trade on ivory. We've seen some countries in, China have stopped the business of carving and all that. China have come into close, but there are some countries that are coming on. They want to sell the ivory, but where are they selling this? So my opinion here, and I know this is the opinion of my colleagues in Geneva now, is first we want to, like what has happened now, to restrict countries from selling animals. I know the zoos still want to keep animals there, but the thing that is coming out clearly, they must protect what they have there. Not even elephants, but even other species. The other thing I would wish to see in Africa is to end the trade on live elephants. The other thing, the poaching, or selling like the trade which is happening in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Botswana, at least taking those animals or those countries back to Appendix 1, ending the trade, because the moment we end the trade, because what is happening in Botswana is actually affecting us here in Kenya, Tanzania, Somalia, and other countries that are bordering, or those that have elephants within their region.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that update on this conference. That was Jim Justice Nyamo, there, Executive Director of Elephants Neighbours Centre. Thank you for joining us. Moving on to other news now, the Economic Office of the Chinese Embassy in Conakry recently launched a training initiative for 50 Guinean executives on agricultural techniques and planning. Its goal is to boost the Guinean agricultural sector. More details now with CGTN's Astatal.
Various executives from the Ministry of Agriculture, the private sector and local structures specializing in agricultural development are taking part in the training. During this time, they will learn good agricultural techniques, opening up of production areas, industrialization and processing of products.
China and Guinea had the same problems. Despite the diversification of natural resources, China has experienced many difficulties. We found solutions as we went. This is why we saw a great development. The Guinean executives who are taking this training with me are interested in the courses, but also think to find a solution to the problems posed.
The aim of the training is to boost the country's agricultural production.
All the techniques applied by the Chinese from 1980 to the present day will also allow us to propel the agriculture of our country. So the Guinean government will no longer import rice. We can improve our production if our difficulties listed during this training are taken into account. If we add to this the Chinese experiences, Guinean agriculture will be better.
The particularity of this training is that it takes place locally. This is new for participants. We believe that they will take advantage of the Chinese expertise in agriculture because the government attaches importance to agriculture.
Guinean agriculture has important assets that offer many economic opportunities. Today, many farmers are self-reliant thanks to the country's vast land.
All the needy who are around this arable plain can now find food. I thank the President of the Republic, Professor Alpha Conde, and ask him for the multiplication of such initiatives throughout the country. He must help us to open up the fields. Access is almost impossible. To speak of development, we must first achieve food security. As a mother, I encourage such initiatives. Foreign countries and partners must help us to value agriculture because it is the lever of development.
However, the country still struggles to achieve food security and economic growth. According to studies, only 50% of its land is exploited because of lack of funding and poor agricultural techniques. Astatal, CGTN.
A young designer from South Africa is using a fresh, young, innovative and modern approach when manufacturing her jewellery. The Huawei jewellery design and manufacturing company incorporates inspiration gathered from both traditional African roots and contemporary influences in each piece of jewellery. CGTN's Yulisa Njumela tells us more.
Huawei celebrates and preserves the meaning behind her jewellery. Each piece celebrates the transition of life.
From past to present, old to new, and dated to trend-setting. Njabu Griffiths is the founding member of Huawei Jewellery Designers. The company was founded in 2003 after Njabu got retrenched. She describes it as an outfit that has an innovative, dynamic approach to designing and creating accessories. With their roots firmly here in Africa, their designs incorporate traditional techniques with the latest trends in fashion and accessories.
I've chosen to make contemporary African jewellery. I think I've started where I know. I'm comfortable with the culture. I know a little bit more about our culture, so it was easy for me to start from a place of comfort, if I could put it that way.
One of Huawei's contemporary African jewellery pieces is this, inspired by the Zulu plug earring, which they customized to give something authentically African, but with a bit of a fashion flair.
What we've done, if we take, for instance, the Zulu earplug earring, we've taken it in its, in its modern form, and we've learned a little bit more about the Zulu culture, why they actually have the earrings in the first place, and we've sort of made them evolve to the modern, more of a fashion flair. So yeah, we've sort of evolved, and it's more modern and contemporary.
Her main clientele is those who appreciate the origins of her designs.
Our clientele is mostly tourists and people that are looking for something that's authentically African and modern or with a bit of fashion flair. So it's basically people that appreciate other cultures and things like that.
The company is 100% female-owned and employs a number of other women and young people. Yulisa Njumela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Chirping of birds, sounds of whispering trees, burbling of streams. When sunlight sets the forest's leaves aglow, and waterfall surges down from the mountain, we see and hear the Earth's wondrous beauty. The Earth is meant to be appreciated, and the life of its inhabitants deserves our endless exploration. Come with CGTN to listen and see, in chorus of life, to marvel at nature and life.
All of the business news coming up for you after the break, including Africa Development Bank set to revise the continent's economic outlook. And Southern Africa Economic Bloc SADC calls for sanctions against Zimbabwe to be lifted.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The African Development Bank plans to revise downwards its economic outlook for the continent. The bank's president, Akinwumi Adesina, says the ongoing China-US trade dispute and uncertainty over Brexit poses risks to Africa's economic prospects. The trade war has disrupted global markets, and Britain appears to be on course to leave the European Union on October the 31st without a transitional deal. The bank will review the economic projection for Africa, estimated at 4% in 2019, if global external shocks accelerate. Adesina has, however, echoed the need to boost intra-African trade and agriculture to cushion the impact of external economic shocks. The recent ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area is expected to bolster economic growth and development. However, African countries need to remove non-tariff barriers to boost trade. Leaders from the Southern Africa Development Community have called on the European Union and other Western donors to end economic sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe. Tanzania's President John Magufuli, who now chairs the economic bloc, said Zimbabwe has turned its economic prospects as it works to boost revenues and needs the support to revive its economy. Backed by other leaders from the region, Magufuli said the sanctions were counterproductive. The sanctions imposed in 2002 include arms embargoes, freezing of assets and travel bans. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa attributes the economic isolation and crippled economic development on the sanctions. Zimbabwe is facing high inflation and commodity shortages such as fuel, power and water. China's foreign trade has continued its robust growth with a 3.3% surge amidst the trade war with the United States. The results are considered a boost despite the previous forecasts by analysts who credit the performance to several factors, including the China Belt and Road Initiative. Here's more on that.
China's Belt and Road Initiative has secured infrastructure development and investments across an estimated 152 countries. The plan has also supplemented trade, boosting China's economy immensely. However, the ongoing trade war with the United States has influenced a change in the dynamics. Various Chinese goods have been subjected to tariffs, which have led to markups of products.
The first reason would be that American companies have placed larger orders to make provisions and thus to make up for any price increases that could be experienced by products coming from China as a result of the trade war. The other reason would be that Chinese companies would have had time to find other markets, including the countries of the European Union, Africa, and Latin America. And these countries would have bought more than they did before. So these are basically the reasons that can explain the growth of China's trade balance despite the various US sanctions.
The Belt and Road Initiative has offered regional connectivity as China pushes to establish a trading-centered network in global affairs. The country's economic growth has been accelerated by the potential rise in foreign trade. According to customs data, exports increased 6.7% in 2019, widening the trade surplus by 47.4%.
The most important thing in economic life is competitiveness, and Chinese economy competitiveness is now beyond doubt. China has several instruments that it can use. There is the efficiency of its economy and the currency, especially that the yuan has seen a slight decline. There are also major projects such as Belt and Road, which in terms of investments will allow China to make trillion-dollar investments over several years. China also has more than $3 trillion in reserves, so if it wanted to attack the U.S. currency, it would have already done so. I do not think we should be alarmed by the measures taken by the Trump administration because these measures affect Americans first. They will increase the prices of products imported from China, and it is the American consumer that has to pay.
In recent years, China has become one of the largest global trading partners. Its revenues are forecasted to grow with a potential increase in trade facilitation and in a bid to construct a unified large market. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Meanwhile, the Office of the United States Trade Representative announced that it would delay the 10% tariff on some $300 billion of imports from China. Kagosi Motsoane is an international trade manager of Asia at Western Cape Investment and Trade Promotion Agency, South Africa. Motsoane says that the U.S. government's pursuit of unilateral trade protectionism would seriously damage the interests of developing countries and harm the global economy. He argues that the correct way to achieve common economic development is through collaboration.
We've seen a protectionist global climate does one thing: it hurts the developing world. It hurts countries that are on upward trajectories, which are still quite delicate. And often when countries close their markets off using tariffs, they make it difficult for countries A, developing countries A, to source the things that they need to allow that developmental process to take place. And B, what it ultimately does is it thwarts that progress. And so China's insistence and posture on an open economy, global economy, is one that is aligned to a lot of developing countries' economic strategies and ambitions. And so for us, that's the win-win.
A leaked cross-government study is warning of the impact of a no-deal Brexit, outlining the worst-case scenario. Details from the dossier warn of food and medicine shortages if the UK leaves the EU without a deal. However, Michael Gove, who is responsible for no-deal preparation, said the document was old and Brexit planning had accelerated since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more.
Britain will experience bumps in the road if it leaves the European Union without a deal. However, the UK government says it's more prepared for that outcome than it previously was.
The document that has appeared in the Sunday Times was an attempt in the past to work out what the very, very worst situation would be so that we could take steps to mitigate that. And we have taken steps, not just to deal with some of the risks, but also to make sure that our economy and our country are better placed than ever to leave the European Union on October the 31st.
According to documents leaked by the UK's Sunday Times, but whose interpretation was contested by ministers, Britain will face shortages of fuel, food and medicine if it leaves the European Union without a transition deal. And just as the details emerged, Brexit Secretary Stephen Barclay has signed an order that will end all European Union law applying in Britain from October 31st. In a tweet posted Sunday, Barclay said he had signed the legislation setting in stone the repeal of the European Communities Act 1972. The European Communities Act 1972 is a vehicle that sees regulations flow into British law directly from the EU's lawmaking bodies in Brussels. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted on the same day that signing the document means that the United Kingdom will take back control of its laws on Brexit Day.
It is the case that the UK government have been clear that we will not put up any infrastructure at the border. There's no return to a hard border. We will have a system of very, very limited checks, simply where international law requires it. So we are not going to ensure that there are any impediments on the Irish border. What the European Union decide, well, that's a matter for them.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel is, however, cautiously optimistic about these developments. While at a special opening of the Chancellery building in Berlin, she outlined Germany's position on Brexit.
We are prepared for everything, one could say, even if we do not reach an agreement. But I will try in my power to find solutions until the last day of the negotiations. It would be better to leave with an agreement than without one. But should it come to that, then we are prepared for this eventuality.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is due to visit Germany next week. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Now for a look at Huawei and its tenuous ties with Washington. Can the Chinese telecom titan continue doing business with American companies after today, that's Monday? It seems even US President Donald Trump can't provide a clear answer. Huawei was first placed on a blacklist, then given a 90-day reprieve that ends today. CGTN's Toby Muse has more from America's capital.
The fate of telecom giant Huawei's ability to purchase US components come Monday is unclear, as President Donald Trump gave conflicting answers when asked by reporters what action his administration will take. At first, Trump contradicted news reports that a 90-day extension to Huawei's license to purchase American parts would be forthcoming.
And actually, it's the opposite. Huawei is a company we may not do business with at all. And it was sort of reported, I think, the opposite today. I was surprised that we are open to doing business. We're actually open not to doing business with them.
Later in the same exchange with reporters, the president changed his answer, suggesting the decision on granting an extension to Huawei beyond Monday's deadline is still open.
We'll see what happens. I'm making a decision tomorrow. It could be temporary, could be, and maybe not.
The US first moved to block Huawei from buying US parts back in May, claiming the company poses a threat to national security, something the company denies. In 2018, Huawei purchased some $11 billion worth of components from US companies. Huawei's fate has been a part of the ongoing trade war between the world's two largest economies. The US insists that Americans are not being hurt by the trade war, insisting that China is feeling it more.
There's no evidence whatsoever that American consumers are bearing any of this. I can tell you this. This president is committed to standing up to China and getting a good deal for the American people, and he will continue to do what needs to be done.
Now the trade war is occurring amid increasing fears of an economic slowdown in the US and around the world, which could lead to a recession. The stock markets zigzagged over the past week on fears of a recession. And now the trade war has become part of the US presidential election campaign, with two Democratic candidates on Sunday publicly criticizing Trump's handling of the trade negotiations. Toby Muse, CGTN, Washington.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including South Africa women's rugby team books 2021 World Cup slot by thrashing Kenya Lionesses 39-0.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.
Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We We start with rugby, and South Africa have booked their place at the 2021 Women's Rugby World Cup in New Zealand with a 39-0 victory against Kenya in the deciding match of the qualifiers. The win marked a clean sweep for the Springbok women and wrapped up a full house of points from their 3 matches, following 89-5 and 73-0 victories against Uganda and Madagascar earlier in the tournament. The Springboks ran Kenya Lionesses ragged, taking a 24-0 lead at the break. They added 3 more tries in the second half for the 39-0 win. Kenya will now play a team from South America for a place in the 2020 repechage, a final chance qualification for the World Cup featuring best losers from all World Rugby regions. Springbok captain Babalwa Latsha hailed her side for defeating a tough team.
I think this is by far the toughest match that we've played in the entire tournament. All the credit to the Kenyan girls. I think they brought it to us. They tested us on all facets, and I think that they put up a great fight. Like I kept saying before, I mean, we have utmost faith in our preparatory system. I think that we have faith in our plans, and the plan was to just execute today, and I think that we've done that well under pressure, because like the Kenyan girls put us under immense pressure. But again, credit to them, and also credit to my team for actually putting up such a tremendous fight, and actually taking this one.
Now cricket, and